growth or profitability, or it's stability and flexibility, right? And in business, you want both. That my role had to be different than just take it over and try to fix it. And the push did not turn the strategy into an effective execution at that time. How do I not lose the organization, but still get results by driving it?
Welcome back to the Dear Global Leader podcast. I'm super excited. We are having a new guest. This is Astrid Moses. She's the current CEO and chairwoman of the Swedish-American Chamber of Commerce in Minnesota. She's also having an advisory board seat at People Equation. You could tell us about that. And at the same time, you are actually a former global leader in multiple engineering company. So I'm super excited to have this discussion with you today. Actually, we know each other from the past. We had a part of our career together. And I wanted to understand, what was one pivotal moment that launched your international career?
Oh, wow. You're really starting with a tough question. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to this podcast. I appreciate it. And yes, we've known each other for quite some time. A pivotal move for me was when I moved from Sweden to Minnesota, and I've took on some responsibilities that were truly global. I started my career in a local kind of environment in Scandinavia. But when I moved to the US, all of a sudden I was thrown into the deep end, into the global world of business. And that was just a phenomenal experience. And that happened back in 1995.
Okay. And so it was, did you say it was your first global leadership experience or global? Was it at the same time the global part, so you were going from local to global, and at the same time your first people leadership role or business leadership role?
That's right. So I went
Okay.
from an individual contributor. So I had responsibility for the Scandinavian region for Eaton Corporation from 89 to 95. I had different roles. And when I moved to the US, I took on not just a leadership role, but also a global role. So that was kind of an interesting experience because I had not had those experiences in the past, right? And now here I was having to lead, but at the same time also having to think globally. And I thought at the time, I am global. I'm from Sweden. Now I'm in the US. Little did I know that global meant so many different things at the time.
It's actually perfect, because this is the reason why I built this podcast, is because a lot of the people feel that we learn things in the books and in the podcast and at normal education, and then we just go global and we can just apply and force people into what we know and this will work out. And I think you are the best example, leading also region in later in your career, to have all of this diversity and learn the hard way that this is not this way. So maybe usually what we look at during this podcast is looking at the backstage of the global leadership, so also the behind the scenes. So maybe you can tell us, what was it for you during this first experience? What did you learn? What was something that you didn't expect it, and maybe something that you continue later in your career?
Well, I mean, I had 37 years, right, in business, and it's really hard to kind of nail down to one thing. But maybe the one area that I had to learn really, really fast was this paradoxical leadership. You know, I've read a lot of books about the paradox. It's almost like the yin and the yang, or it is growth or profitability, or it's stability and flexibility, right? And in business, you want both. And what I've learned during this transition, you know, from an individual contributor to a leader, I had to be strategic, but at the same time, I also had to be adaptable, flexible, and fast in decision making. So this whole strategic agility felt to me like a yin and yang. It's like, do we want to be strategic or do we want to be agile? And the answer was, we want both.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I've learned over my career that companies that learn how to do this, or individuals too, I mean, this
Mm-hmm.
doesn't speak to just companies, individuals that can be strategic but also be agile are the ones that can be very, very successful in their careers and in their business. And that's probably the one thing that I learned from mentors and sponsors of my own back then.
And how did you apply? Because I think it's super interesting, this paradox, to also the paradox of the local and global. Because you often, as a global leader, you are sitting in a specific zone, and sometimes you're also the country manager. So you are also have the insights of one place, and maybe can give you a bias into, this is my view, I get more insights. And then you have all of the rest of the region, and you have this paradox because you need to be everywhere. And at the same time, some are closer to you to provide you more insights.
Look, I've had global roles ever since 1995, whether it's engineering roles or on the front end, sales, commercial, or if it's the last roles at Danfoss I had with
Mm,
regions. And what I've learned is during my career, especially when I traveled, the more I was out in the field, I learned new things. I saw things that normally would not have reached me. And that gave me
mm,
so much optimism, so much hope, and so much excitement. And when I came back to the home office, I always reflected on this and said, the center of knowledge doesn't sit in the home office. The center
mm-hmm.
of knowledge is spread
On the
across
field.
on the field. And when you're out there and engage with our own teams or with customers or with distributors, you learn things that normally would not hit your desk. And that to me gave me that insight into how things can be different from region to region or from product to product or from market to market. What works in one local area could be a great success in another area, or it could be also failure. And so you
Mm,
have to have that insight, that willingness to adapt and be flexible. And I learned that throughout my career. Sometimes we went in on a
mm,
mission. We're going to do this. We're going to launch
mm.
it. And then we realized,
With a good
whoops,
intention.
with good intentions, and we realized the assumptions probably were too optimistic. We didn't ask the right questions. We didn't target the right audience, or whatever it might be. And then you have to
Mm,
stop and pivot. And
mm,
pivoting doesn't mean you pivot to something else. Pivoting simply means you learn something. Now you have to unlearn and adjust.
mm.
And that is not an easy thing to do. Learning is almost easier than unlearning.
I actually have two questions that triggers to me because on the first end is this on the field because the global leader travels a lot, but you also don't have the time. Usually your schedule is really packed, so you actually have very little time in the field and you would need this information. But sometimes people, you have this rule that says, don't come with a challenge, come with a solution. So maybe you can start having a very narrowed view, filtered view. So that's good to be on the field. So my first question is, did you put in place a mechanism for your direct report and their direct report, because you had quite high level, for them to not filter you the information, so then that you get access to the real challenge and the real information, not just what they think they want you to know or hear?
I mean, it wasn't the process, but what it was trying to create a safe zone where people
Mm-hmm.
were able to bring topics up, even the topics that were controversial or that they had challenges. And I've learned that projects don't always unfold as you planned, right? Sometimes optimism clouds the judgment. And initial assumptions need to be adjusted because as humans, we are very optimistic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this optimism can create a little bit of a challenge for a project execution. But when that happens, I've learned, I didn't always do it in my career, but I've learned as I matured in my career that my role had to be different than just take it over and try to fix it. Okay. And so what I tried to do, I stepped in with support, with coaching, with guidance, but most importantly, asking the right questions. And those questions, in my mind, would help the teams navigate the obstacles and get back on track. Because the tendency you have is, I go in and fix it. And that is, it's not always a formula for success. You want to empower, you want to create a safe zone so people can come in and tell you about the challenges. And then you have to hold back and you have to not provide the answer right away, even if you think you have it.
Yeah, so maybe I'll go back then on the second question, and it triggers me something else. But like you mentioned about pivoting fast, and we have worked together, so I know that you're taking decision fast, but not in the negative way, meaning that I think you have what these big leaders have is that you can just analyze the data and you can be decisive. I think it's a good quality, and maybe you can tell me how these skills develop, because I'm pretty sure that the youngest you that were moving to the US didn't really have these skills. Maybe you needed to analyze, because I know that I was this person that needed, because we worked together, to tell you everything where you wanted just few data to make the decision. So how this develop for you?
You're absolutely right. In my early career, you wanted to have 100% of the answers before you make a decision, right? And you continue to analyze and crunch data and interview people and what have you. And you realized it's like a logarithmic scale. If you have 50, 60, 70%, you probably already have a direction of where you want to go and what decision. Getting to 80%, I think if you haven't made a decision by then, the remaining 20% is not going to give you better answers. So you have to be confident enough in your data collection or in, whatever you've analyzed, that by 60, 70-ish percent, you already have a feeling of where you want to go. But that being said, you can also make mistakes by doing that. And you have to be recognizing when that direction may not be a good one and pull back quickly. If you fail fast and then pivot.
And
That
how
has
do you
always been.
communicate that? How do you communicate that? Because sometimes, we go through a lot of changes, organizational changes, and it seems that it should be a muscle that we all have, but it's still an inner thread. And a lot of the people don't want to fail fast and they don't want to pivot. They just want to stick and to say, okay, we are in it now, we are in it. And so how also maybe do you guide people to say, maybe we anchor, we still have the same vision, but we need to change the path because we are not going in the right direction?
I think failure needs to be viewed as a learning opportunity. Okay. And, I've learned this when I ran the engineering organization. In engineering, we had groups of engineers that supported customers, sustainable engineering. We had groups that launched new products, and then we had groups that did research. And in research, a few amount of projects actually make it. So the dilemma was, do you stop research because only a few projects make it? The answer is no. You want to nurture the creativity of the engineers and the engineering organization to come up with ideas. And when these ideas don't get to a commercialization path, doesn't mean it was a failure. It just meant we pushed the envelope.
Okay, I
Implemented that,
see.
you allowed that creativity to nourish and flourish. And at that point in time, when you have to pivot, you got to pivot in a positive way. You can't make the organization feel like this was a failure. No, this was a learning, a discovery, and maybe it was too soon for the market.
Okay, yeah, I see.
And I think applying those engineering principles in the way engineers are operating across the business, I think would be fruitful.
And regarding maybe the dimension on the cross-culturality, because I know you were placed in this situation where you had to communicate maybe a vision or a change or strategy to different region, and they have different ways to to receive the communication, even if they are, let's say, the engineering, they're all engineers, but they will maybe, by the cultural aspect, take communication a good way or bad way. So what was some of your principle in communication to pass messages a bit to a cross-cultural team or even to a town hall with different people?
Communication is a really, really tricky example because communications in different regions of the world, different cultures, different languages have to be adapted. Doesn't mean that the narrative is different. You change the narrative every time you talk to a different group. No, the narrative has to be the same, but the way you communicate has to be adjusted. In some cases, you have a fixed jour where you communicate the basics. In other cases, you may have one-on-ones with people. In other cases, you may have a round table where people come in and ask questions. So I've learned that I want to say maybe 25 years ago, when we really expanded globally, and we set up the engineering center in Pune in India. And all of a sudden, I dealt with over 180 engineers with a completely different demographic, different background, different languages in many cases. So how do you make sure the organization is unified and they have a sense of belonging to the bigger organization, yet you cater to their needs? And so oftentimes when I travel there, I did spend an awful lot of time in smaller groups where I invited questions. Was this clear? Does this fit? Does this work in your region? And allowed this conversation also back to me, so I learn what works, what doesn't work, or what may be too ambiguous for them to take actions on. And so I learned that, I want to say maybe 25 years ago. And hopefully I got better as I grew in my career. But we all have blind spots and we try to do our best. And oftentimes, maybe people don't tell you. You're not clear in your communication. And I try to always invite feedback. And every time I finish a document, I call it feedback is a gift.
I know, I received it. This
You've received
exact
that.
same way, the way that you describe. So it's actually truthful what Astrid says.
Feedback is a gift, even if
Yes.
it's critical feedback. That's even more important than, hey, great job. You did a great
it needs to be
presentation.
actionable.
Yeah, and you want to learn and you want to hear other people's perspectives. And sometimes you cringe when you get that negative feedback or constructive feedback. And hopefully
No,
you can.
if it's made with good intention, I think it's
Yeah.
receivable. Maybe you can. Now we looked a bit at the beginning of your career and your job discovering a bit of the India part. And I know that later you have been working with different regions and you have had different roles. Maybe you can pick one moment that for you is important and let us know what was the backstage of maybe one of your project or one of your decision where the global part really made this challenging, where on the paper maybe the person above you say to you, please cascade that, or this is the project, and then the tricky part became scaling or cascading or something linked to maybe integration, because you also have been part of an integration.
Well, two projects actually come in mind. In my mid-career, I was responsible for strategic planning. And the strategic planning process during that time, this was between 2000 and 2004, if I remember correctly, we had acquired a number of different companies, we integrated the companies, and now we had to set a new direction, a new strategy. And when the strategy was done, was presented, it was approved, you had to deploy it. I'll tell you, the deployment phase was probably harder than creating the strategy because you can't reach every corner of the world. You can't reach everybody with different backgrounds and languages and so forth. So how do you create a deployment strategy that's not washing out the strategy itself, right? That was incredibly hard, and we kind of pushed it through instead of embracing it and creating a pull, it became a push.
Okay.
And the push did not turn the strategy into an effective execution at that time because it
Okay.
was pushed in. After every year, as we did strategic planning, we kind of learned, oh, it can't be a push. It has to be a pull. How do you create a pull? And then you invited people from other regions or from other backgrounds to be part of the journey and to create the deployment plan. And they became then the mouthpiece of the story. So throughout this process, I learned that. And the other thing I learned was, maybe this was 2004 to 2010, we launched a lot of products, and the mindset was these products are going to be launched globally.
Okay.
Well, the product fit was not always the right fit for every single region. And we learned over time that this high-end technology that may work in some regions does not work in all regions. And this product needs to be kind of featured down to a
Mid-tier.
to a
Yeah.
mid-market kind of an approach, which we called just right.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, the not
And
over-engineered.
not over-engineered. And because it was over-engineered, you couldn't get a lot of momentum and traction and prototypes and what have you. And so this was a learning that the organization went through as we globalized. And people would always ask the question, why can't we launch it? And why can't we penetrate a market outside of our home market with this strategy? Well, this was one of the reasons, right?
That's really interesting, because I wanted also to ask you, because I think you have been in a lot of position where more and more that you climb the ladder, you are maybe less into the execution and more into, like the advisor board, and you will see a lot of this strategy. And maybe I wanted to ask you, how do we make best passing from a slide to execution? Because I think we are in a world where, the Excel and the PowerPoint rules our corporates, but at the end of the day, we need doers, and we need people that are empowered, and also we need these champions that execute. Because let's say acquiring a company, if you put, let's say, this is the value of a company, if you don't integrate it, the value is not actually created. So maybe you can share your experience on how do we pass from slide to execution.
Well, I think it comes down to what I said earlier about projects don't always go as planned. Okay, whether it's a new product launch, whether it's integration, whether it's whatever. Okay, and so you have to ask the questions, why? Why do projects not go the way they're planned? Well, it comes down to the over optimism, which can cloud judgment, because now we are on a mission to do something great, and that greatness doesn't allow us to stop and really question. Do we have the right assumptions? Do we understand the landscape? Um, do we question the current status quo? The things we know. We know certain things when we enter a project, right? And sometimes that can also cloud the judgment because we think we have the answers to it.
We
But
are
you don't
falling in
always,
love with our own idea.
with our own idea or with our experience from the past, well, it worked in the past, it should work in the future. And we don't question things in a way that solidify these assumptions. And I think that's one of the reasons why optimism, I'm not saying we should be pessimistic, but optimism oftentimes is going a little bit overboard. You know,
Yeah,
optimism is great, but when you have to make a
you need to be
commitment,
realistic.
it has to be realistic. That's right.
It's when you say it, actually, that you say, oh, it worked in the past. And I think I see this also in the global business, because maybe we had the chance to have people coming from other companies with other experience. And then I see that a lot of them fall into the trap to say, this worked in the past in my other company, so then I will work this here in a different country, in a different company, in a different culture. So what is your view on that?
Well, I think I wouldn't want to dismiss, but what I would want to do is pair up that experience from the past with the youthful exuberance of the future, of the present.
Mm, 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 mm,
Okay. And so it doesn't mean any one of these demographics have the right answer. But if you pair them up, the experience, and you may have naysayers here, and you may have yay sayers on the other side, enthusiasm, exuberance, you don't want to stifle that.
mm,
But by pairing them up, I think you create a combination that says, well, it may not have worked in the past, but hey, we have a new tool, we have AI, we have other
mm.
mechanism of succeeding, and you might be able to move both in the right direction. I've seen that work, especially in engineering projects where the mindset was, we've tried that, didn't work. And once you throw in a different demographics of teams, all of a sudden, new ideas surface, and there is a willingness then to test them out.
Mm. I guess you have seen a lot of different countries running in different way. Did you had like did one of this, I don't know, team across the world really stood out for you for a certain reason? I don't know, because maybe their efficiency or maybe their people side or something that made you connect a bit and learn also from, because now you have been a lot in Sweden and in the US, you have been in a lot of places, and I'm sure that you were talking about synergizing, making connecting the dots in different countries. So I guess that maybe you have been there and you pick some good rule books and then bridge them together.
I'll tell you, without really isolating it to one country but I will, okay? What I've observed, and I was always so enthusiastic when I came back from a trip to Asia, specifically China or India. Boy, things moved fast. When I came back from China, all you had to do is make a statement about how about we try something like this. Within a week, you may have a concept on your table. Within 2 weeks, you may have a prototype on your table. And so the mindset of speed out of
Execution.
out of China has blown me away. India was a little bit different, but what I've experienced in India too is that creativity that existed in the organization. All you had to say is, "Oh, I wish we had a product that did X, Y, Z."
Mm.
And a group of people got their heads together and they created a opportunity or an idea that can be pursued. So I've really enjoyed working with our teams in Asia Pacific, China, and India. Was the area that I spend most of my time with. I was blown away by the speed of reaction, by the absorption of the problem, and then putting their heads together and figure it out. And now in the current role that I'm doing, the chamber, the Swedish-American
Okay.
Chamber, I just spend a day in Uppsala in Sweden, which hosts the oldest university in Sweden, 550 years, and it's the fastest growing city in Sweden. And I had the opportunity to meet with government officials, but also academia, and also an organization which combines business, government, and academia together to
Education.
drive
Yeah.
innovation. For that reason, Sweden is also #2 in the world in terms of innovation, right? And so what struck me was everybody I talked to, whether it's government, whether it's academia, or whether it's business, they call it samarbete, which means collaboration. And they have truly
Mm.
broken down the silos where
Okay.
people from different backgrounds come together and try to solve a problem, right? So that I did not experience when I lived in Sweden before I moved, but I've seen it now, and it tells me samarbete, the collaboration mindset, is what
Mm-hmm.
will make companies and individuals and countries, and you have it, be successful.
And did you maybe, when you were there and talking to them, extracted how they came to this DC law, because I think in global business we're having a bit this challenge is that there is so many localities, so many teams, so many departments that sometimes they can run in siloed, and this is not exactly what an effective organization wants. So maybe we can extract some learning from them or from another experience you had.
Well, it united people around a purpose, and the purpose was to make Uppsala the next Silicon Valley of the North. That
Okay.
was it. I mean, it was a very simple statement. We're going to be the Silicon Valley of the North. They're attracting 100,000 new people to live in the Uppsala area. They're fastest growing, da 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 da. University is exceptionally great. And I was exposed to them because Minneapolis and Uppsala are sister cities since 25 years, and we've celebrated this relationship for a long time. I didn't know these things before, right? And now I'm trying to ask the question, what made you collaborate at this extent? And I think there's this one rallying cry around we want to be the next Silicon Valley
The
of the
vision.
North. Yeah, and sustainability and life sciences in that region plays an enormous role for academia, for government, and for businesses, you know. And I think this is the motivator, you know,
Mm.
for people to come together.
And maybe part of this current role that you're having, you're exchanging the students in order that they have an international, experience, and then maybe they can help them also launch their international career. So maybe you can mention about, I don't know, about your experience or about some cases of how this enrich the, like the career or their perspectives to, they have the education, but maybe seeing the global world will maybe also add something to their views, their perspectives.
Well, just the last week, Thursday and Friday, we had 10 Swedish universities in Minnesota, and we called it the Study in Sweden program. We hosted it here in Minneapolis, and then there was a second day, which was hosted at one of the Swedish founding colleges in Minnesota, Adolphus Gustavus.
Okay.
And we had over 80 young professionals that registered. The 10 universities were identified and they were sitting in front of their posters, and students would walk up and ask about international experiences. I mean, the resonance was extremely positive, both from the students but also universities. On the flip side, we have over 300 Swedish students in one of the Swedish colleges at North Park. North Park was also a foundation of Swedish immigrants, 300 students, and we are securing now a couple to become interns for the Swedish-American Chamber. And we're doing this because it gives them experiences, it gives them a new network. And then when they go back home, they didn't just learn at school, they also had an experience outside of school.
And did they share with you some of the challenges that it exists between, like, I don't know, the Swedish system and the American system that you lived yourself also, so maybe you can relate on what is difficult when you come from a Nordic, because the culture is a bit more flat, and the American culture, maybe you have to coach them also during this academic exchange.
Yeah. Boy, you're asking good questions because this actually did come up. You know, in Sweden, there is this incredible connection with businesses. So students, as they graduate, right before they graduate, they do their masters with some company in Sweden. Even prior to that, they have summer jobs. They have all kinds of interactions with it. In the US, we have a new president of one of the Swedish colleges here, and he said, I need tighter relationships with businesses. I want my students to get practical experiences throughout their 4 years of degree. And so we're helping them now to figure out how can we pair them up with the right talent, with the right company to bring interns into their experience. So I think that's one of the differences in Scandinavia. Um, I don't know that I can point at another one, but that one came up.
But maybe in your own path, because for example, I also work in the US, and I think that on the westernized side, a lot of things are similar, but I work in a Danish company, so also, Nordic culture. And I feel that I saw some difference because I personally really like the American work culture because I feel people are very proactive. They really want to show that they can add value, and they're also not afraid for their role because they think that they add value, so they are happy to help you because they are secured about the value that they bring, which is not the case of every countries. So this was something that was different with me because I know that the pace was a high pace, and this is something that I like. And in other country, like it depends, it can be also more different. So I just say that depending on which culture you have, but this was a positive for me. Then there were, of course, some surprises that went along the way. So I don't know if for you also during now you decided to stay, but maybe there was some stuff you had to adjust to it.
Of course, of course. I mean, look, speed is everything, right? And oftentimes, what I've learned here, impact and value creation is on top of
I agree.
everybody's mind, right? And so you make the best decision you can at the at the right time, hopefully, and then you go and you run. And in other areas, maybe consensus is more important. A consensus building is also critical, right? You want to make sure the whole team buys into the direction of the company and of the department or of what have you. And the question I always ask, does that slow you down? Because it takes time to build consensus and you have to be repetitive
It's the
and bring everything.
foundation.
Yeah. And so I think there's pluses and minuses on both sides. Sometimes you jump out of the gate can be a good thing because it's fast. You make a decision if you have the right assumptions, but sometimes you can't and you leave the organization behind. And on the flip side, the consensus can also slow you down, but on the positive side, everybody is now aligned and everybody is moving. So, yeah, you got to weigh things through a different lens. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, if you want to do a big strategic direction of a company, you need the consensus, clearly. If you want to launch a product in Canada, as an example, in a specific market, just let's go, and then we might be able to pivot and maybe stop and then look back and see, is everybody behind me or not? So the context matters.
The context matters totally. And talking about also context and maybe reflecting on your own leadership journey, did you had to adapt your style over the years to also evolving in this global leadership role and scaling also your role, maybe one country, few countries, regions?
Oh, many times, to be honest. I have gone through psychological tests like many other people have done too, and I used insights discovery probably 3 or 4 times in my career, and it keeps coming back. Do it right, do it now. That's what I stand. I mean, this is who I am. Do it right, do it now. And it's kind of like a psychometric tool. And it's based on the psychology of Carl Jung, if I remember correctly. Anyhow, what I had to learn with this mindset, do it right, do it now, sometimes I had to stop. Okay, because the do it now is get out of the gate and keep running, speed running. And I had to learn how to stop, ask the right questions, the assumptions, are we sure the assumptions are correct? The other thing is the learning and unlearning. I always encourage people, learn as much about your business, your industry, your market, as much as you possibly can, about your customers, your needs, your competitors, etc. But there also comes times when you have to unlearn some of these things, and you may have to invite other perspectives. What you've known before and learned before may have to change. And I think the unlearning sometimes is harder, or even being aware that you have to unlearn something is harder. So those probably are my two, well, strategic agility, I think, being strategic and being agile. I think that is hard to do. Some of the best performing, highest performing companies, they have this and mentality. We need to do this and that, right?
Yeah.
They have to do both, right? It's not a yin yang, it's both. And I think
It's
maybe
the
the culture,
paradox, is what you were saying at the
absolutely.
beginning.
Yeah. And I think maybe the other thing is the cultural aspect, lead with empathy. Try to put yourself in other people's shoes.
Mm,
Don't come into a meeting thinking you have the answers and you're just gonna roll it through. Um, Empathy makes an enormous difference to bring people along, inspire and motivate. And then you have to recognize one style doesn't fit all, so you have to make some adjustments to it. But yeah, without adaptability, failure is almost guaranteed, right?
mm,
Adaptability is what organizations and people have to do today, more so than ever before.
yeah. So yeah, super interesting. Maybe we can explore because I guess in your even in your current role, but in your former role, you were part of maybe leading a leadership team or having your own leadership team or being in a board of a company. And I think this is something that is a lot very opaque for a lot of the people in the company. Then we get the cascading. So maybe you can give us a glance of what's happening under these doors, especially let's say when you have, I don't know, a project, what is happening with all this group? How do we use all of the brain that we have in this room for this big decision or big changes?
Well, look, I mean, you have your staff, no matter which organization, where you are in the organization,
Mm,
you have your staff or you're an individual contributor inside the staff, right? And when big decisions have to be made, you want to hear people's opinions. And in order to do that, you need a safe zone, right? You want to invite different perspectives and not dismiss. And this is a real watch out. Oftentimes, people come in with a perspective and they get dismissed and they get shut down and their
mm,
voices are not heard. You know, you have to be patient and invite those voices. And when somebody shuts somebody else down, you've got to step in and say, "Excuse me,"
mm,
and pause and make sure you lead by example, right? Invite those voices. But in the end, once you've heard the inputs and you collected your data, I think now you own it and you are accountable and responsible for making the right decisions with the inputs of everybody. You can include them in the decision process too.
mm.
But at that point in time, you own it. And if it doesn't work out, you're held accountable and you're responsible for it.
And is this the same system in every countries? Because some countries are more into consensus, some countries are more into, you were talking about India or Asia Pacific. They like the hierarchy, so maybe they will be fine with this. And maybe in the Nordics they prefer more the consensus. So is this for global company usually the same, or we also adapt
I
depending on the team?
I think it's got to be the same. A leader has to take accountability for the actions on their watch, right? If you start pointing at others, well, we were 10 of us
Mm,
in a room and we had a great discussion, but nobody really made it. We made a decision together. Now, who is responsible? The leader has to take accountability. That goes in my book, in every country in the world.
mm.
There's no hiding spot. And you need to
Yeah,
know
it fall
what
into
you're,
the chair if
yeah, I mean,
nobody's accountable.
that comes with your responsibility as you grow and you lead organization. You know it happened on your watch, or it is your decision in the end to say yay or nay. And if it doesn't work, you're held accountable.
Mm. Maybe you can tell us about something like that because I guess we don't always win, right? So we win or so we learn, but like when we learn, we need to take accountability. So I don't know if you didn't experience it yourself, you're lucky, but maybe you have
I
a
did.
situation where you can say how did this went for you and what was the leadership process where you have to take accountability? What are
All
the
right.
action we do when we fail?
Look, I did. I actually did have an example like this where the over optimism took over, and without naming any specifics, we
No way.
acquired a company, and it was a high-end technology company. When we did make the acquisition, we built assumptions around all of it, all the stars and the moons were aligned on paper, but in reality, that wasn't the case. And so when we couldn't execute the model, yeah, I was called on the carpet, right? Astrid, right? You have led this and you have, made these assumptions and I had to kind of, take a couple of those pokes in the eye and recognize, yeah, it happened on my watch, and we've learned something different, something new, and hopefully won't happen again. And I think when you take that responsibility, it goes a long way. If you hide it and you hide yourself from it, um, that kind of can become a career stop for
Or
many.
even the team can stop trusting you, because
Yeah,
it's all
yeah,
about trust of the leader. If you
that's right.
decide to be accountable, they know they can be fully confident with you, giving you all of the information because they want you to succeed. But what happened to this integration then? Because it's integrated. Okay, not everything works out, but then we need to pivot, as you were saying.
That's right. And we've learned new things. Well, things we couldn't do in the due diligence process or what have you. Afterwards, we kind of opened up the
Mm, the
the
real books.
details and real books, and we realized, oh, whoops, that's not how we were thinking it could play out. But look, things like these happen, and this is why this is in business. This is business, and business, not
Mm.
everything happens exactly how you planned, and you have to have the ability and the willingness to kind of hold up your end of the bargain, right?
Accountability,
Yeah,
accountability
yeah,
card.
yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully it doesn't happen too often, but
Yes, I know it didn't, but sometimes,
sometimes it does.
if you do it and do it now, sometimes it can happen that it doesn't work out.
That's that's right.
A question on, because I know that you are known for being a very good people leader, but also a good, mentor or coach, depending what is the role that you will take. Did you had, I don't know, an example of someone that maybe you spot the talent, and then how did you grow this person into maybe of a global leadership role, into coaching and sponsoring or mentorship?
You know me, this is a passion of mine, right? And there's three aspects of this. It's coaching, it's mentorship, and sponsorship. And yes, I have many examples, and that gives me probably the greatest satisfaction of my career when I see somebody that came out of school and I had something to do with their development, and now they're leading big organizations or they're presidents or vice president or whatever,
Mm,
right? That to me is the number one satisfaction. And what I try to do is I try to take the coaching, which is the daily
mm,
kind of
yeah.
interaction, seriously. And I try to ingrain this feedback as a gift. And the feedback I gave sometimes was not flattering, but
Mm,
I cared, and I saw a talent in a specific individual, and I cared about it, and I wanted them to see my perspective, even if it's not flattering, right?
mm,
Because that's the only way you can improve. The mentoring is where you have maybe not a monthly discussion, but you have discussions around the future and what the
mm,
ambition is of the person. You know this person quite well in order to give guidance on, have you thought about this? Have you thought about
mm,
that? But the more important, aspect of all of this is sponsorship. If you know this individual, you trust that this is the talent that can take,
mm,
the role of somebody in an organization, you have to be willing to sponsor this individual and spot opportunities when the individual is not around.
mm,
Okay. And like, oh, I know Joe, Sue, whatever,
mm,
and here is an opportunity. And then you match the two. And that's really important because uh, they can't do it themselves. They need somebody that believes in them to
mm,
open those doors, right? And I want to say, I have many examples of people that kind of grew up in the organization together with me, and I see them now do so incredibly well, and I'm incredibly proud of them.
And how did you, and I know for sure that that's true, and how did you, because you say someone needs to believe in them when they didn't believe in them at that time, or maybe they were not ready. So how do you spot talent? You know, like the bird talent, really the one that you were saying coming out of school, and that you can say, okay, I see something in this person.
Well, look, you have to test it, right? And I have one specific example where I tested an individual. I think it was 4 jobs in 2 years.
Okay.
Every 6 months, almost every 6 months, it was a different role. It was in this industry, and it was that product, and it was this country, and it was
Mm,
that initiatives, what have you, and it was 4 very different initiatives to try to test. Within 2 years, I knew,
mm.
and this
This person
individual
has the
has it.
potential.
He has a potential, and he has learned an enormous amount, didn't always maybe believe in himself, but I did. And I think we have many leaders in organizations that do these kinds of things. We just
Mm,
need to do more and then be there, nurture, and export. This is
mm,
another pet peeve of mine where holding on to talent is
mm.
never a good idea. You gotta a great testimonial of good leadership is exporting talent.
And what happens when you have this, you test, because not everybody is like some people will test people, grow their skills, but maybe they will. Do you think that then the coaching advice for these people that have tested others should be to then sponsor them to say, okay, I think I see something in this person can grow, and then what do you do as a leader when you test it?
Well, you nurture it with other leaders or other opportunities. You become the sponsor. Say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, this individual would fit really well with your organization. But there's also
Okay.
cases when you test and it doesn't work, and you kind of lose a little bit the confidence. And maybe I was too over optimistic. Maybe it's a different role, or maybe can't quite do the whole thing.
Mm.
Those situations happen also, and this is why you want to test and you want to observe and you want to coach and mentor, and so etc. But it's hard work and it has to be intentional.
And is it different for you when you had to spot the talent in very young people and in, like, you were talking about VPs, because I'm sure you're doing it at a different level.
No, the process was to include everybody from early career onwards. Okay, so you kind of had a really wide pool of people that you kind of discussed in the staff, at least where the staff that I worked in, and I'm thinking about engineering right now. I mean, we took
Mm,
engineers out of school and we put them in this pool because we thought they had a talent and they needed to be tested and they needed to be observed and so forth. So it went all the way. It wasn't just one layer down or 2 layers down. It went quite deep
mm,
in the organization. And then you came back, the process worked when you came back the following year or the following
mm,
cycle and you said, whatever happened to Joe or Sue, or, did
mm.
they actually, yeah, they were
Delivered.
perfect. Yeah, perfect
Okay.
candidate.
But
Yeah.
if you're in the same situation like the coach mentor and the sponsor, because you say if you had tested this person, in multiple role, maybe you were the direct manager, so you could move this person. But then maybe you cannot become the sponsor if you're already the manager. So is it time then to, as you were saying, move this individual into another team, so then create
No,
also, or you keep
Uh,
it,
a
keep him or her?
sponsor, you can be a sponsor of anybody in an organization. You don't have to have direct responsibility in a
Mm,
direct line of reporting. If you've seen somebody that has talent, you want to promote that person. You want to have you met such and such? I suggest you guys talk to each other and you act as a true sponsor and promoter of that individual,
mm-hmm,
which again, it takes time, takes effort, but in the end, the satisfaction is fantastic when you see them grow.
mm. And I think between this passion of yours and also like the coaching, it's natural that you're now a board member, because I think it's a natural link, because you have to use that plus the passion for the business. So maybe you can tell us a bit more about this, because I think People Equation is also an Indian company, or
Yeah.
has a link in India. So
Hmm.
maybe also you can, because you mentioned you like how fast they are going. So what is the challenge for you as a board member with a different culture, a place that is not in the same time zone as you, and also, with the board member comes certain responsibility. You cannot just do it now. You need to coach.
Yeah, well, People Equation is a wonderful organization with incredible talents, and Anupal is the leader of the organization. I really, really enjoy every interaction I have with him. My role is more as an advisor because we have done it before. I have done it before. I've set up some of the organizations in India throughout my career, along with many others in our organization. But the experience I gained is what I can share with them. Is these are the watchouts, these are the things you should consider. But this organization, while it is settled in India, is doing a lot of great work with European companies, Scandinavian companies, German companies, to set up global competency centers.
Mm.
And you think about it, in India, 1 million engineers come out of universities every single year. These are
Yeah.
highly, highly educated individuals with a lot of great ambitions. And by setting up these centers of competencies and capabilities, you
We can
can
export the skills.
scale. Yeah, you can export the skills, but you can scale it up. And rather than have, you have 10 divisions or you have lots of different
Mm.
smaller organizations, everybody builds their own in different countries. Now you have a scale, and this drives towards excellence, right? Because of scale, you can leverage it across multiple divisions or multiple countries, etc. So I have incredible joy when I talk to the organization. I've also done a couple of podcasts with them about my experiences, and they have worked quite well with Scandinavian, especially Swedish companies. There's even an avenue called Sweden Avenue in Pune right now with companies that
Okay.
have latched on to this mindset and to this dynamic. So it keeps me busy, and it keeps me busy with the kind of things that I have enjoyed during my career.
And tell us also, drive us a bit into the backstage. What happened when he calls you to be an advisor? Like, what is the type of decision he wants you to help with? Is it also only you? Is there a board? Is there
Yeah,
multiple
there's a
people you
board.
need to? Okay.
Yeah, there is a board. There's four of us, five of us actually on the board, and we come together on a regular basis. And he calls me in when they want to make a change or they want to do an initiatives, and he wants
Mm.
to get my opinion. Does this initiative, do you have experience? Did it work? But also, when we need to convince people to make the jump.
Okay. So it's not
Okay,
like
so
it's not like a big mentorship of a company in a
no,
sense.
no.
It's also into, can you be an enabler
Yes, can
of
you be
this,
enabler?
or catalyst of these
Yeah, can
changes?
that's right. And can you help us convince? Can you share your story, and maybe we can convince company XYZ to make the leap of faith and jump into it, right? And so oftentimes we have those conversations. Ezra, they only speak German. Can you jump on a call and help us
Mm.
communicate what your journey has been? And I try to help.
And do you see a difference between being an internal board member, because you have been an internal board member in the past, and an external board member? Is there a difference of, I don't know, posture and communication, and also into the role and the responsibility that you're having?
Look, when you're in it, you run it as any project or initiative when you're in it.
Okay.
When you're out of it, you express your experience. what worked and what didn't work, and why these are the watch outs. This is
Mm,
what these were my headwinds, these were my tailwinds, right? So I understand your question now. It's different when you're in it in a company and you have to make these same decisions and initiatives. You run it like a project,
mm,
with
okay.
assumptions, with business cases, the payback, and etc. When you're outside, you provide guidance and advice. You don't tell them how to do it and what to do, but you just tell them these are the watch outs. I would not go that direction for these reasons, right?
Mm. And is there the accountability card that you were mentioning last time? Okay, I need to be accountable. Is there also this card? Is it the same in both role, or maybe when you're an advisor, you cannot be accountable, but you want to be accountable for the result, but you cannot be.
Look, as an advisor, you hopefully people are accountable because the guidance you give is based on your experience, so you should be held accountable. However, when the leader and the executive team seeks input, you provide advice, but they go their own way or they decide
Mm.
something different. Now they own it, right? And the accountability has shifted over to them.
And
You
how do
know.
you influence at global scale? I think it's a because there is a lot of office politics and there is a lot of maybe not as an advisory board, but even in your global leadership career, there is a lot of different interests, a lot of different opportunities, a lot of different projects, and then you need to drive people in the same common direction. And you need maybe sometimes communication is not always just working. You need also to walk through maybe people in one-on-one. So what is this backstage, I don't know, influence, not manipulation, I really mean influence in the sense of moving, influencing, working through people, I think is a better word to say it.
Look, I'll go back to my engineering time when you had a lot of projects and you didn't always have the budget for carrying on all projects. So now you had to make some tough decisions. You're getting it, you're not getting it, right? Your project is a go, your project is not a go. Those are not
Yeah.
easy conversations to have, but these conversations must happen. And, you try to be factual. What drove you to that decision? Why was this decision necessary? Maybe this project had a better path to success, or the returns were better, or whatever was, it had to be. You have to communicate why you made the decision and why some people got the money and the budget and the resources, and other people maybe had to
Mm.
give up some of it, or you had to shut down a project. I had to shut down projects. And those were not easy discussions, but I tried to get the rationale in place, communicate the rationale, and this is why, this is how, and this is the decision. And those are hard things to do, and it's not all hunky dory. It's not all walking in a park,
Mm.
but you have to
Yeah.
be applying respect and in how you communicate those things.
Did you had maybe one time in your career an individual that were very hard to couch on this negative news to receive, maybe not on feedback, and how did you empower this individual or move this individual to see a bit the better side of kind of empowering people and coaching people through negative news or project?
Uh, well, we had individuals that take feedback and individuals that don't take feedback, right? And I think those that don't take feedback, after a while, you kind of give up a little bit and say, I'm not
Mm.
wasting my time here. I need to move, and I need
Mm.
to surround myself with people that are willing to learn and grow and accept feedback, etc. But when you cut a project or when you slow down an initiative, you don't want to do it in a vacuum. You want to communicate why, you want to communicate the rationale, and then you want to sit down with the team to do a follow-up, to get the
Mm.
sense and just sense the
The feelings.
pulse. Yeah, it's like the pulse, they're down. Are they demotivated now? Is there's too negativity, and that negativity can percolate throughout the rest of the organization. You got to watch out for those things, right? And I didn't have any specific example where this happened, but I did have examples where there was no feedback, the resonance.
Okay.
You tried, you provided it, and it was just went on deaf ears. And after a while, you have to say, look, I gotta move. I don't have time to convince somebody that is not willing to be convinced, right?
Understand.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I understand. Maybe regarding some of your current position in the Chamber of Commerce, maybe you can tell us a bit more what is the leadership role there? And because I think it's very different into like a private sector and this sector. And yeah, maybe what is different in terms of leadership in this role, or maybe what is similar? It could be also interesting to see.
Yeah. Well, the objective is to pair Swedish innovation with the market in the US, and specifically in the upper Midwest. My title is Minnesota, but we also cover North, South Dakota, and Iowa, and the western part of Wisconsin. So it's kind of the upper Midwest. The challenge is we have board members, and we have people that are volunteering. So how do you get them to engage, and how do you get them to really drive things forward? And so I come from this background where, all right, we set a mission, we set a direction, we have a plan, we go. And things get in the way. I gotta get my boat out of the water. I have to fix my whatever cabin. I have to travel to this country, that country. And so that to me this is my challenge to overcome. How do I not lose the organization, but still get results by driving it? Yeah. So that's some chance. And then there's others that are super engaged, where we have the phone call I just had was one of them. Every day we call, we talk about what's next, how do we do it? What is similar is the need for a strategy and the need to adjust, because things pop in, and new things that you didn't think about, like the Study in Sweden program that came in, and we stopped some other things, and we wanted to engage with that. And it's in the end, you still want to have an impact, and you want to create value. And our job is to bring investments into Minnesota, bring investments to Sweden, and create jobs. It's really an economic development kind of a story that we're trying to bridge.
No, super interesting. And I think you mentioned something that resonated a lot with me, because you say that a lot of the people in your ecosystem are volunteers. And I think this is one of the skills of leadership that leaders need to learn before having the title, or even after, to be honest, if they don't have it. Is like, how do we move people without having the title, the authority of the power? And I think it's a really interesting opportunity to be, let's say, director of an association, for example, or I mean, I'm not mentioning taking a role of a chairwoman, but you can be the club leader of your, I don't know, sports, and then you need to figure out, how do I move these people, and it already do that. So maybe you can tell us, for these individuals, maybe the one that still have their job and still have their life, how do you grab their attention, and how do you move them towards the common goal?
You have to have a purpose. It really is a purpose. And I mean, in the current role now, I look at the facts. Minnesota has 430,000 Swedish descendants, the state with most Swedish descendants, okay? And the Swedish government spends over 100 billion in foreign investments in the US. Minnesota gets less than 2%. Okay, a lot of it goes to the coastlines, New York and all those big
Mm,
cities and the metro areas. And so now, how do we convince companies to stop in the Midwest, in terms of proximity,
mm,
market, top tier state, high education? I mean, we have a litany of reasons why companies should stop. And so we're trying to create the awareness back to Sweden and vice versa, create awareness about Sweden here. And
mm,
frankly, it's Sweden and Nordics because we have opportunities even outside of Sweden. But to me, it's not hard to rally people around it if the purpose is has an emotional tie with a business impact.
mm.
It
If they
doesn't
can
matter.
connect to
Yeah, it
it,
doesn't matter who you report to, if you're a volunteer, if you're not a volunteer. If people believe in it,
they will
they
act.
will act and they will take actions. And that's I learned that in business, but I also applying it now in this current role.
Yeah, and how did you apply that in business? Because I mean, now I understand the mission, and if I was a Swedish in Minnesota, of course I will relate right away. But sometimes you can be, as you said, like an engineer and work on your passionate project, then it killed, and then you need to work on another one, and maybe you're not super motivated, and you don't see also why you should put off all of your heart into it if maybe it get killed all the time. So then in this situation do you make this person relate to the goal, or maybe not this person, it can be someone else, but
It's an inspirational role that you have as a leader, right? It's you lift it up, you develop product for an agricultural market that feeds the world.
mm,
Okay, well, that specific product may not end up there, but maybe the next one will. And so it just the narrative and the storytelling is critical to get people to want to be part of an organization that does good,
mm,
in the world. And I always, whenever I have an opportunity to speak to whatever politicians, business leaders, I always bring up Danfoss. Danfoss is such a change agent in terms of climate and all the work that Kim and the team is doing with the IEA. And I bring this up. I talk to mayors and I bring up Project Zero in Sunderberg and so forth.
Sandborg, yeah.
And people are kind of looking at me and I said, guys, there is a playbook. You just need to apply it.
Mm,
And then once they understand this mission, this vision,
they're
I
hooked.
think it becomes easier to adapt, right? And it took only 2 years with the local mayor to get a meeting on this topic. And we finally now, I hope we're able to convince him now this is the way to go. If Sonderberg can do it,
Okay,
we can do it here too.
so I hear that inspiration but also grit, it's part of the recipe. You
It
need
is.
to 2 years
Abs-
is also you need to keep resilient. That's
yes,
the dream.
it's for sure.
Good. We already arrived near the end of the podcast, so I have three questions that I will ask to each guest. So, and Ezra already did it in the episode one. The first one is, what is something that you learned early on and that you used later in your international career? And it can be a skills or it can be whatever. Something you have in your toolbox.
I think listening carefully, that wasn't always my forte, when I first started, because do it right, do it now requires, come on, let's move into action, right? And so I've learned the listening part, and I had bosses in my career that were really good at it, and I observed them, I watched them, and I listened to what was unsaid. And this was a tip I got from one of my early bosses who's no longer with us, unfortunately. And the other thing I learned that was not in the beginning, but that was kind of mid-career is the pauses and the
Mm,
silence often matter more than the talking. And you need to know when you integrate a pause and
mm.
when to be quiet, and let silence kind of sink in a little bit because you can deliver messages by being quiet,
I
you
see
know.
what you what you say, because being an extrovert, I also fall into the same trap as you, as I need to talk my way to forge my thinking, compare that introvert do it in their own mind, and then they only speak when they feel that they have captured their ideas. And sometimes we have some leaders that are like introvert, and you can learn a lot from them because the way that they interact is not the way that others interact, but also through this I can totally see. I'm thinking of someone we both worked with that I think mastered this skill.
Yeah,
So I
for
totally
sure.
see it.
Yeah.
The second one is in two parts. What will be, because I think there will be two category of people that will listen to this podcast. There will be the emerging leader, the rising leaders, more on the maybe junior to senior and mid career, and then we would have maybe the more seniors that are already in the global leader. And so my question will be, what is one advice for the rising leader and what is one reflection for the global leader?
Uh, One advice for the for early career potential leader is the learning and then later the unlearning. Okay, but learn, trust, and credibility. I think is build the trust by doing what you said you're gonna do, and that leads to credibility. And I think the same goes for the people that are already leaders, but I would add one thing to those, and that's the element of empathy. You
Can
know,
you develop
empathy.
this empathy
Yeah,
for leader?
leadership without empathy doesn't get you very far. You need to learn to apply empathy and put yourself in other people's shoes. Don't let your title and your power get in the way, and hear the perspective of others because our journeys are all different. And by listening and applying empathy, I think you might learn something different that
It's
will change.
especially no, I think it's super good, especially in the context of cross-culturality, because sometimes even with the barrier of the language and so on, you can have some views on an individual, and maybe if you take the time to being to apply empathy, maybe you can understand better the culture, better where are the skills, how is it resonating in the culture, and see the potential through a different lenses compared than the one you have been born with or utilized. So it's really a unique perspective. And the last one, I know that you're like me, an avid reader. So my question will be, what is one book that you really love to gift and why? And it doesn't need to be gifting, but like the one that, come to your mind that you will recommend to people naturally.
Well, I've read over several hundred books here in the last couple of years, but I actually gifted this one book to my whole team before I left, and it's called The Book of Joy.
Oh,
And
yes. Mm-hmm.
it's the book by Desmond Tutu and Dalai Lama. I think it's a book about compassion, and that is a book that is probably one of my top favorites. But I have so many others because I'm in a book club with my daughter and some of our friends, and I try to kind of we're trying to read books that have a historic significance, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they're fiction, sometimes they're not, but there's always an element of historic fiction, historic happening. I also liked I liked so many books.
But
The
do you usually gift, because you say to the full team? What is the intention behind? Like, do you give something that will help them while you will be away? Is it something you give them to make it as a message, as a thank you? Is it, what's the message behind a gift? Because I know that behind a gift there is a lot of thinking.
Yeah, yeah, it is really to leave them a little bit of a legacy of our time together, right? And just because I liked it doesn't mean they're going to like it, but to me it mattered. It meant something really important, right? And I do believe that in this new world of High competitiveness, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of anxiety. If we apply a little more compassion, I think we could solve a lot of problems in this world. But at the same time, I'm also liking books like The Prisoners of Geography as an example. This was a book that was incredibly eye-opening for me, where it was a perspective of each geography,
Okay.
why people and why leaders do certain things through the lens of geography. I mean, that was just an
Okay, I need
eye-opener.
to get my hands on this one then. It goes
Yeah,
straight into my book list.
yeah,
Super.
yeah.
We could continue forever, so I'm super happy. It was a really interesting episode. So I will see the rest in the next episode. And as always, I will mention feel free to comment and put good ratings. So then it gives me an opportunity to have other wonderful guests like Astrid. So good. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.